Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I have put together, I could talk about this for so long. So I've put together a few ideas around the contemporary aspects of building in earth and touching on a few things that I think are important in the, like context right now, where we are right now. And if we have time, I can also show you some examples of buildings that we have been involved in. And I'm hearing from the group, there's interest in tiny homes. So I have tried to focus on owner builders and on smaller projects, and then also just having to say we are a building company. So quite a few of our clients have chosen to build rather large homes. And while I really love building with earth, it's the tiny aspect is where my heart lights up the most. So here we also have a couple of tiny homes that are built out of earth. But yeah, there's a scale of and range of sizes in terms of price, size, and so forth. So just a couple of things about me. I'm Verena, and I am the owner and operator of Solid Earth Adobe buildings in Nelson, together with my partner Scott. We have had the company since 2002, so we're celebrating, actually have just celebrated 20 years in this business. And how I came to earth building was I actually came from Switzerland as a student exchange student to Nelson College for Girls when I was 16, and I met Richard and Bella Walker, who had built one of the first modern consented Adobe buildings just down the road from where I was staying. And when I entered that building as a 16-year-old, it was love at first sight. So I didn't know anything about building or earth, but there was just something about the material that has captured my soul and heart and has not let it go in the past 30 years. So I went back to Switzerland and I wanted to become an earth builder, but that was not really an option at the time. So I studied architecture and then went into a course in building biology and building ecology, which that's my official thing is, building biologist. And then when I had the opportunity to return to New Zealand and take on an existing mud brick yard here in Nelson, I did that. And that's when I actually took on the business 20 years ago. And in the 20 years that I've been in New Zealand, I have been very active in the Earthbuilding Association. So I was chair of the Earthbuilding Association for 7 years. I am at the moment part of the revision committee for the Earthbuilding standards. And as part of that, and just professionally, I've been really interested in research and development in the earthbuilding field. So we're quite proud of some of the things we've achieved in that respect. I'll talk about that a little bit more. And also with the European background, I wanted to bring some of the things that were quite common in Europe already at the time into New Zealand. So yeah, it's been fun. It's been very diverse and a lot of work as well, a lot of volunteering work, a lot of networking, and a lot of hard physical labor. So yeah, I'm here and I'm sort of feeling passionate about passing some of this on and maybe stepping more into a teaching role moving forward. So I'm a little bit at a transition in my life, just age-wise and energy-wise. And this is the tagline and what I always like, the intention that I bring when I teach and when I share anything about earth building. I really, really desire to ignite people's passion for earth. Earth meaning the beautiful raw earth we can use for building, but also in bigger contexts, our connection to Mama Gaia and being part of all of that, not being separate, returning to our roots and to simplicity. So I'll have to see how I go with the time. The idea is to give you a little, like a dip in, I don't know your previous knowledge of earth building, but just a really short overview of earth building. Share why I think it's a really, really good idea to incorporate earthen materials into any design. Then speaking about low density Adobe, which is what we have been developing, touching on performance and standards of earth buildings, so the modern context, especially here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. If we have time, we'll look at some photos of buildings, and I'll share a couple of resources. And I don't know if we'll go into a Q&A or if we'll just do the breakout groups. So yeah, let's get going. So what is earth building? Basically, in a nutshell, earth building is using subsoil, so that the soil is the layer of earth which is below the topsoil. So you have vegetation, topsoil, and then there's something below it, which sometimes is sticky, sometimes it's grainy. That's the subsoil. And that layer of earth can be used for building purposes. And you see on the photo here, this is a photo of our mud brick yard. It's my colleague, Diana. She has been making bricks with me for many, many years. And it was actually at the end of our brick making season where we were dressed up as mud brick ladies. So that's why you see her here and the outfit she's wearing. And in the background, you see our house. So simply just taking clay, the subsoil, mixing with water, getting it into like a creamy consistency and molding building materials from that mix. That's how simple it gets. And earth building really is found on most continents. It's found in many, many countries. You can look up this. This is a map of earth building construction. It's put out by CATER, the French Earth Building Research Institute. And really, it depicts that wherever you find subsoils with some sort of clay content, there is an earth building tradition. And how these earth buildings look is adapted to local conditions, but it is very, very widespread. And in fact, like for millennia, people have built with earth. Earth is the most ancient building material. There's many, many buildings that are still standing that are thousands of years old. Many buildings that are still inhabited that are well over 500 years old and still in sound condition and maintained. And it is estimated that up to a third of the world's population actually still lives or works in buildings constructed of earth, with that number decreasing rapidly because of the explosion in cities being built, and that all being built out of concrete, pretty much. So it's well time tested, and it has a beautiful, beautiful tradition all over the world. If you want to look into that, I highly encourage you. And I'm not going to go too much into the different techniques and how they're done, but again, there is many different techniques, and they can roughly be divided into three sort of groups. One being monolithic walls, which are things like you might know, like rammed earth, cob, poured earth, goes into that category. Then there's a lot of different types of brickwork with raw masonry, just mud bricks, so Adobe, pressed bricks, and so forth. And then there's also a very big group of earthen techniques that are used in conjunction with supporting structures, often timber structures. So I will go into this more because this is actually something that we do quite a lot here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. It doesn't have to be your entire mud brick building or earthen building. It can be a combination of, and it has a lot of advantages to do that. And it's in the modern context, we're looking at two scenarios. So we're looking at new builds. And for the new builds, often we are looking at solid earth walls, so either made out of brick or cob. or earth timber hybrids, or earth and straw or other kind of biomaterials combined. And then a very big area actually is the retrofitting. And I'm very passionate about retrofitting because it's sort of taking something that is already existing and using those resources or those buildings and upgrading them and using earth in various different ways in those retrofit situations. So either you can put it on the walls, you can make panels, you can do plasters, you can do floors and so forth. And it's a very easy way to get into earth building and make something beautiful and something that performs really well and also save costs. So just showing you a couple of images that depict the possibilities and also some of the techniques that we use. So one of the things we do quite often is veneer, Adobe brick veneers that are installed inside buildings as heat sinks. So often the buildings are passive solar designed, and a conventional timber frame building often doesn't have enough thermal mass. So you can install earthen walls in places like where there's a heat source, so either by the fireplace or where sun hits it, and use the earth to store heat. So that's the Adobe veneer. Earthen plasters are another option. So that's again in a timber frame building, a retrofit situation. It could also be a new build, but like it's earth, so it's just the subsoil and sand applied over the wall surface, and you can do really nice things. So with my European background, I have a big passion for earthen plasters, and that's one of the things we really introduced when we came to New Zealand, is that plastering over board, jib borders and so forth. Another option is earthen floors. So there's different techniques for that. You can make earthen tiles, or you can do poured earth floors. And then your load-bearing earth walls. In our case, we mainly work with mud bricks, so Adobe bricks, and do whole homes. It could also be a technique like rammed earth or cob, which is load-bearing. So, why would you want to incorporate earth or you use earth to build your entire house? If it was me answering that, I would put the sustainability as the first point. So it ticks many eco boxes. It it's a locally available material. It's very locally available. It's in most places. You will find earth that is useful for building purposes. If you're not mixing it with cement or lime, it is a reversible process. So you can use it indefinitely, and it doesn't create any waste. So we work on historic buildings quite a bit. And just imagine having a building that can be hundreds of years old, and you can break material out, reshape it, and fix the material with the same material, or change, do alterations, and so forth. You're just reshaping the same material. It is absolutely reusable. And if you're taking the roof off and the building goes back to the earth where it came from, so zero waste. It's really nice working with this material and seeing how little waste you produce. We're just in a building site at the moment, and all the other trades, like I think they've filled 2 skips so far, and it's just horrifying, but it doesn't happen with earth. And then from the sustainability point of view, it's also the embodied carbon and the energy use, in production, but also then the energy consumption of the building, which I will talk about a little bit more in detail. Other really big advantages of earth, again, not mixed with cement or lime, is regulation of indoor humidity. I could go on about this along. I'm not going to talk about it too much, but if you want to understand more about this, just get in touch, and I can send you studies or put you in touch with, you know, the information, it really creates healthy and dry living conditions. It takes out, like if there's humidity peaks indoors, it really regulates that, so prevents mold, and especially in humid conditions, it's a really good building material for that reason. We've talked about thermal mass already, so if you use the heavy earth as bricks and so forth, you have thermal mass, so it stores heat and slowly releases heat into the interior of the house. But I'll show you, we can also use earth in more insulating situations. So it can be both. It can be low cost. It really lends itself to learn how to use it yourself. You use it in a community effort. So yeah, it's not, you know, it can be taught, and in actual fact, we teach this online. So it's been a really amazing experience for me to see that I can actually take people through their own building projects by guiding them on their own projects. So it's definitely useful to, it lends itself for owner builders or for community efforts. And it's beautiful in terms of creative expression. So many advantages, and there's more, but those are the main ones. And I just want to say a couple of words about embodied energy. So at the moment, we are at a point in history where we need to conserve carbon. And the whole discussion about, you know, saving, like creating energy efficient buildings, yes, really important. And New Zealand is catching up to this. But we should not be only looking at energy use, like wild, you know, by the inhabitants. We need to look at embodied energy. So how much energy is used to produce building materials. And when we build a building, there's a jump, you know, like there's this energy budget that the house has. And then if the house is amazing, and then, you know, it's really well insulated and doesn't use much energy later on, that's great, but we need to save this energy right now. So there is data comparing, you know, things like passive house and regular buildings, and then the biomaterials and the earth, and different scenarios stack up in different ways. But what I'm trying to say is it's important to look at, and it's important to do the calculation over, you know, like what is happening right now, and then look at it over the life cycle of the building and differentiate. There's a bit of a nuance there. And if, you know, if you're using earthen materials which come from, you know, just your property or really locally, it's amazing. Like, for example, I'll give you an example. We've just done a project in Dunedin, and like the timber and the earth came from the property, and that was the main thing that was used in that building. There was, you know, an iron roof, but it just felt amazing to use these really low carbon materials, and especially if you're mixing in biomaterials like timber or wood shavings or hemp, for that matter, if it's locally grown, you come to a really good equation, you know, embodied energy equation that can even be positive. So you're actually sequestering carbon with your building. So definitely interested in that. And it is one of the reasons why we have gone into developing low density Adobe. So low density Adobe was our attempt to keep the simplicity of Adobe. So Adobe mud brick, imagine you're building Lego. You have little bricks, like big bricks, but you're building the building out of your Lego blocks, and you're putting a roof on, and that's it. So your wall does everything. You know, you don't have timber frame, insulation, lining, cladding, all these things. No, you just have a load-bearing earth wall, which, like, the building system is super simple. It's one of the reasons why it's so popular, is because it's a simple system. And then there was the added thing that we wanted to have better insulation values because we're in a temperate climate. And we wanted to have biomaterials that sequester carbon. So we actually tried many different biomaterials or lighter materials mixed with clay for bricks, and in the end came up with a mix that was using a biomaterial that is locally available here in Nelson, which is wood shavings and recycled paper. And those two materials together created a much lighter brick, so there's better insulation value, but it is still load bearing. So we're quite proud of this. It has gone through quite a lot of testing. So we had earthquake testing done on it. We had thermal testing. We had more earthquake testing, you know, like we developed it in conjunction with Auckland University and Otago University. And it is, you know, it is not as glamorous, or it doesn't have a cool name like hempcrete, but it is actually our local equivalent to that, just put together a little bit different, using clay as a binder rather than lime as a binder, lower embodied carbon. Yeah, and then we also have had thermal modeling done on it, actually, because at the moment we're in this situation where the New Zealand Building Code is getting overhauled, and there is now a change. There's a big push for higher R values, and the differentiation between timber frame and solid construction has been canned. So basically all buildings have to have a certain R value, and they don't take thermal mass into account anymore. So that was happening last year. So, you know, it's continuously put the pressure on us to get with the times, and we are with the times. So we had this thermal modeling done comparing the light Adobe building with like a much better insulated timber frame building, the way they were suggesting. It's actually now more than what has been adopted, and came back with really nice figures. It performs better than a well-insulated timber frame building. So good to know that, you know, like there's anecdotal evidence of this. People say it is really dry, it is really comfortable, especially if it's passive solar designed. It's awesome. But actually seeing the figures was reassuring. And talking about performance, you know, when we talk about earth, like probably the main question we get is, does it wash away in the rain? And no, it doesn't. You know, like the fact that many earth buildings are very old, and it's not just in arid countries, it's also in countries with high rainfall. If they have good boots and a good hat, so good foundations and good roof overhangs, they do really well. In actual fact, they can handle some dampness. It's just not good if they get continuously moist, you know, and you wouldn't want that for any building. So you need to have some thought about how your building works, especially in New Zealand with the wind-driven rain. You want to generally keep the earth walls away from driving rain. And the way we do this is, you know, plantings, verandas, rain screens, buffer zones like winter gardens, and so forth. So they're fairly durable. And, you know, I'm just thinking about if you're looking at, for example, buying an existing earth building, this is generally something that I would watch out for. You know, how has it been detailed? Has it done well over the years in terms of durability? And it's also like a question that we actually get professionally. Sometimes we advise on, you know, if someone is building is intending to buy a building, or if there are if there is damage or an assessment, we do this for people. The other performance criteria, which is super important in Aotearoa, New Zealand, is earthquake safety. So it is interesting that when we compare the maps of earth construction and earthquakes, there's a lot of overlap. So there's definitely earth buildings in seismic zones, and New Zealand is one of those seismic zones. And we have recently had very big earthquakes that have, like, earth buildings were in the affected areas. So we have firsthand assessments of how the earth buildings performed in those rather large earthquakes. And a really cool thing about New Zealand is that we have a set of earth building standards. So we've had them since 1998, and they're currently being revised. So I'm part of that revision committee, and I see, you know, behind the scenes what goes into like writing those standards. It's something we can be extremely proud of, and it's actually it's a set of 3 standards, and they're internationally recognized as, you know, they get cited, and it's a very robust set of regulations. It sort of lays out 3 different things. So one standard is earth buildings not requiring specific engineering design. So that's like a cookbook, you can follow it, and if you design to that standard, you get tick of approval, you get the building consent. The second one is materials and workmanship. So materials and construction, it explains how to test materials and how to put everything together. And the third one is an engineering standard. So if you want to build something else and you have an engineer, they can look at that and then they can follow it and do specific engineered designs. And in the revision, new things have been added. So like when the buildings were assessed after the earthquakes, generally the result was really good. There were a few tweaks. So then there was more earthquake testing, which we have done here at our premises, and more earth building techniques were added. So the light Adobe was added, and cob, I think, and also there's a section on strawbale with earthen plasters. And so now the standards are much fatter than the 1998 ones. In saying that, at the moment, the 1998 ones, even though they're superseded, they're actually available for free download from Standards New Zealand. So it's a good set of books you could look at if you're interested, and not that much has changed. You would have to, if you want to get a building consent, you would have to go with the new ones, but if you want to get started for free, that's a good place to start. And it takes you through things like bracing calculations and so forth. So here they are, that's how they look. You can get them through Standards New Zealand, and it's NZS 4297, 4298, and 4299. And just a quick sort of thing away, when we teach online, we teach to these standards. So we would teach things like doing bracing calculations, the design of earth buildings, like it's very comprehensive. So it's a very cool set of standards. Okay, so I just want to show you a couple of images about buildings. So this is our building very early on when we started living in it. And we built this entire building ourselves. We made the bricks, and we also tried our hand at carpentry. So it was a very steep learning curve, and it gave us a lot of confidence. That we built it in 2006. So at the moment, it looks a little bit different. There's much more stuff that has grown up around it. And this is how it looks inside. So you see the living room has a big open volume. It's kind of double story in an L shape, and then that big volume. And it shows you that it has load-bearing mud brick walls at the bottom, and then a timber frame at the top. And the timber frame is covered in earthen plaster. And I've done that big feature wall on the side there. That was a lot of fun. So a couple of other images from the inside against the feature wall, which has different earthen plasters on it. The bathroom, where we put earthen plasters in every area that didn't get splash. It really regulates humidity. We never have condensation on our mirrors or anything. And the bedroom, where we did a bit of art on the wall. And then this is the Harrington family. They also made their own bricks. This was a building that I basically taught them how to do everything over email. And then I went to see them when they started laying bricks. That's them here. Here's an image of the bricks they made. It was a community effort. So it was 5 of them making bricks in their front yard. And then they laid the bricks and built this beautiful little house. And here's the house again from the outside. Then there was the Stavely house. Again, it was a young family, and they decided to buy bricks from us. We have a mud brick production here in Nelson, and then they built the house themselves. And you see it's quite a bit colder than we have, what we are used to here in Nelson. And it's a beautiful building. It does well. So that's them during construction, young family. And they built everything, including the joinery themselves. They saved a lot of money by actually making the joinery. They scored double glazing that was, I think it was discarded or for free because it had the wrong size, and they built the joinery themselves around that. So I thought it was a really good example of how to save costs in a building and reuse stuff. And then this is the solar boat. So it's designed by Mark Fielding. He's an architectural designer here in Nelson, and he has put a lot of thought into affordable building. And this is one of his designs that can just be bought. That's the inside. He makes use of thermal mass, Adobe thermal mass walls, either as veneer or as full walls. And again, this building was at least in part built by the owner. Yeah, Mark has really, it's his passion, like the eco building coupled with the affordable aspect. He's been tinkering with this for ages, and he's also right into the garbage warrior concept. So this is his little posse, which is built from pellets and filled with different materials. We have one prototype here, which is filled with light earth. So it's sawdust and earth, and then reclaimed materials in other areas. And he actually has got on his website, Solarboat Ecotech, he has plans for these little pellet buildings. So he has also an ebook on that. It's quite interesting. And then just finishing up with this project we did with Night Tuhoe, where we went in and trained people in the community to make mud bricks, and then they went on to make mud bricks with many, many more people in the community. So this is a photo of Saturday and Sunday, where we made 1,400 bricks with this group of people, and then they made thousands, like 5,000 or 6,000 bricks that went into their big new tribal headquarters. And the second visit here, I went to show them how to lay the bricks, and they did that. So the bricks are incorporated in their office spaces and also in their archives for humidity regulation. It's a very beautiful building if you want to check that one out. And yeah, just wanting to mention that the Earthbuilding Association, so they really represent owner builders, and they put out a nice magazine. They've financed most of the standard revision, and it's a really good place to start networking if you are interested in earth building. And also if you want to have more contact with us, the building portion of the business is solid earth, but where we're going is the earth building school, because we want to pass some of our knowledge on, and we have had a lot of joy teaching online. We also teach in person, but that's been a bit hit and miss in the last couple of years. But we have been running the Earth Building Academy, which is a 3-month online program where we support people with their own earthen building projects. And how that all started was this free online pizza building class, which is still up if you're interested. So you can just grab that and build a pizza oven. It's a good introductory way of getting your hands dirty with a really nice outcome. Okay, so I think that's me.